Matter exists within a sphere surrounded by antimatter. Matter did not defeat antimatter at the birth of existence. Matter simply pushed its way outward from the creation point. The further it pushes, the greater the compression of antimatter beyond it. At some point, antimatter will slow, then stop the expansion of matter. Creation point maintains the beginning and end of both in infinite loops. There are 6 parallel universes in each cross-section of the sphere of matter. Each are identical, each expanding at an identical rate. Each are still expanding at an increasing rate. The expansion occurs in 6 spokes of fierce light. As each spoke, the universe's growth apexes, pierces antimatter's membrane, it leaves a trail that expands horizontally toward adjacent spokes, to either side of it, in 3 axes. This expansion beyond each spoke trails the expansion of each spike outward. This creates a webfoot effect. The webfoot effect prohibits movement between the spokes in present time-space. The speed of expansion between spokes is increasingly towards an equilibrium with the pace of spoke-to-spoke expansion, and if this continues, the connection between spoke expansions would reach the midpoint of a perfect line between each spike. At that point, movement between all multiverses would occur, and matter in each would be joined in time and space for the first time since creation's event. From this point forward, wholeness in every aspect and dimension would occur. Then, as the pace of expansion between spokes increased, beyond this junction of time-space, the webfoot effect would be reversed. Instead of creating perfectly symmetrical inversions into the sphere, now the growth between would exceed outward growth. The sphere of what is matter would change. What was always an interconnected series of symmetrical spokes with perfectly symmetrical concave recesses between them would become an interconnected series of symmetrical spokes with perfectly symmetrical convex abscesses growing between them. And at a certain moment, the entirety of symmetrical abscesses would cause the sphere of all matter to become a perfectly smooth, perfectly symmetrical sphere. And at that point, it occurs to me that matter and antimatter will reach equilibrium as antimatter's force compelled matter's energy to unite rather than expand. And in this equilibrium, the entirety of matter and antimatter would return to the creation point and be compressed within one tiny speck again. In that moment, the chaotic order would begin again, and the entire creation cycle began again. The spiraling between the spikes showed each universe is orbiting the 6 surrounding ones. And in additional observations from what I saw, my impression was all orbits of each universe were synchronized, but the light particles, which I assume were galaxies, were so delicate it was difficult to see all 6 at once. The beauty and order were effortless. And in the center, the origin, the creation point, the black speck of Einstein is still there, but no longer a tiny speck. The center's overall size was approximately 2% of the total area of matter. The center's darkness is far beyond black as I conceive it. The center, the origin, is perpetual energy, feeding its regeneration. as well as the expansion of matter and resistance of antimatter. Multiverses by Nadi. Gray.